on
You've
there.
met the Prime Minister.
You'd be forgiven for thinking an election is around the corner. Snappers, Prime Minister, hospital, children's ward, all the classic ingredients of political campaigning.
This ward looks pretty good to me.
No, it's the windows.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the winter, the wind and rain comes through the
rain
windows.
comes through. Yeah,
On the surface, a chance to urge more take-up on MMR child vaccination rates, but also yet another chance to reinforce a no-deal exit in the face of predictions of chaos under civil service plans dated August the 1st to prepare the UK.
I'm not pretending that there won't be bumps on the road. There will be. I said that on the steps of Downing Street. But if everybody puts their minds to it, I have absolutely no doubt that we can get ready.
According to Operation Yellowhammer, leaked to the Sunday Times, those bumps include shortage of fresh food, fuel and medicines, coupled with panic buying and congestion at ports and airports. Add to that today's reports that the Home Secretary Priti Patel will close the borders after October the 31st to EU citizens seeking work as freedom of movement ends. No plans have yet been unveiled for any proposed visa system that would replace it, and an estimated 2.5 million EU residents in the UK have yet to apply for settled status.
If we end our legal relationship without replacing it with a new system, then we're going to have legal chaos. And this then brings into picture the whole issue of Windrush, only this time it won't be affecting hundreds of people, it will be affecting potentially hundreds of thousands of people.
He says if the government doesn't get it right, he predicts a tsunami of litigation. The Home Office said no one eligible for settled status would be barred from re-entering the country once the doors had closed, so to speak. But how any visa system could distinguish between them and other Europeans remains unanswered. The Home Office simply said improvements to previous plans are under development. So, you might argue, is Labour's opposition to a no deal. Jeremy Corbyn today outlined a plan for a caretaker government.
I will bring a vote of no confidence in the government, and if we're successful, would seek to form a time-limited caretaker administration to avert no deal and call an immediate general election so that people can decide our country's future.
There were jeers too from some in his audience of loyal followers when a journalist asked if the Labour leader would step aside in such circumstances to avoid a no deal.
Would that include potentially stepping aside as leader of that caretaker government?
Beyond the politics, Brexit still poses some very real problems, with 73 days to go, and immigration is one of the biggest.
Simon is reporting. Well, joining me now here is Joe Owen from the Institute for Government and from the campaign group for EU citizens in the UK, the 3 million, Hedvig Hectormans. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Hedvig. How worried are you by what's just been said by the government?
Well, it is very worrying, and it's not just me, but there are a lot of worried EU citizens out there. Because by this move, it seems that the government is creating two groups of EU citizens that are indistinguishable, like your colleague in the report just mentioned.
And you personally have been here since 2001?
2001, yes. Although I have already applied and received settled status.
Right.
So I'm a little bit less worried, but because EU citizens have been given the time until 31st of December 2020 to apply for settled status when there is no deal, I wonder how can people then distinguish after the 31st of October?
And when the Prime Minister Boris Johnson says that, EU citizens who've been here are unambiguously welcomed, embraced, do you believe him? Well,
that is undone now by the reports today by the measurements Priti Patel is wanting to take. So it's a very worrying time since the referendum already. So more than 3 years now we live in worrying times, and this is certainly not helpful.
Joan, only 8 weeks left before we leave, probably without a deal. Is Hedvig right to be worried?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, To put this in context, the last time there was a major change to government immigration policy, it was 4 years from the point it was designed to being rolled out. We waited 2 years for the immigration white paper that arrived last year. Now, with kind of 8 weeks or so to go and having a policy that we don't really know yet, we haven't got the details on, businesses don't know, citizens don't know, but somehow it will be in place by the 31st of October.
And given the fact that we have so little time left and there's so little clarity, is it possible that this is just, dog whistle politics from the government? A bit of rhetoric, some words.
Well, it's very difficult to say. I mean, the Cabinet Committee that this decision came out of was the government's no-deal daily Cabinet Committee focused on readiness for October the 31st. Now, if they are using that meeting to reinvent old policies with just 8 weeks left and try and change the game, then it doesn't bode well for the government talking serious about being ready for no deal if they are reopening these huge policy decisions with so little time left.
So given the fact that we only have, 73 days, what does the reality actually look like if we don't get legislation to regulate immigration? We crash out without a deal on the 31st of October. What does the reality then look like for people like Hedvig?
So the reality can look very simple. This is one of the confusing things about this policy decision, is that where all of the other areas where there is disruption in a kind of cliff edge, as you say, on the 31st of October, the government can just say free movement will continue until our new system is up and running at the end of January 2021. And there would be no big change required.
That might be politically unacceptable, then.
It's politically unacceptable, but there are a lot of things that are politically unacceptable and unavoidable when you get to no deal. Direct rule in Northern Ireland, bailout funds for businesses. If the government's serious about readiness, then it needs to apply the same approach to immigration it has in other areas, which is prioritising continuity.
Hedvig, I mean, you've got your settled status, you've gone through the process. Why are you still worried? I mean, that spells out quite clearly your status after the 31st of October.
That's true, but it's not just me. There are so many people, of course, are according to their own governments.
So how many have got...
They said about 100 million people have applied and been granted either settled or pre-settled.
No, not 100 million.
No, 1 million.
That's a 1 million, OK, right.
So 1 million have applied and received either settled status or pre-settled status.
Right.
That leaves more than 2 million people with just 8 weeks ago. So that is a worry. And also, the whole settled status scheme is based on secondary legislation. So things can change very easily without scrutiny in Parliament.
Should the government just be, getting hold of these 2 million people, putting out in much more of a public information campaign to say, get a move on? Because, once you get on to it, it's quite quickly. It's quite efficient, it's quite quick to be done.
It's actually really difficult to get all of those people to register, not least because there are legitimate reasons why they won't. They don't have access to computers. They don't know that they need to apply. There's whole groups of vulnerable people who it will be really difficult, which is why the Home Office has been so careful about design.
We're talking about 2 million people. I mean, they must do something.
So the
message has got to get out there somehow.
They will have to push out messages in this part of this big communication campaign. Is there a world where they get to anywhere near 100%? It's very, very unlikely if you look at other schemes around the world.
Hedvig, are you worried that if this isn't sorted out, you could become part, or the other 3 million could become part of a new Windrush generation in Europe?
Windrush on steroids, absolutely. And because the whole system of applying, it's not a registration system, it's an application system. The whole system of applying actually can make people unlawful resident overnight. And other than with the Windrush, who were here legally but had lots of problems proving that fact, EU citizens could become unlawful residents, which is it's a very dire situation to be in.
Hedvig Hectormans, Joe, and thank you very much indeed.